9:32, and we'll begin with adoption of the agenda. Is there anything, additions to the agenda from admin?
Your worship, members of council, committee of whole, personnel matter, point section 17.
You have that in the
Verbal update.
17, so that's going to be 10-2.
That's correct.
Anything further?
No, your worship.
Okay, anything from council? All right. Council Williams?
Make a motion that council adopts the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? That is carried. Okay, we'll begin with item 3.1, adoption of the February 15th council minutes. Any errors or omissions in that one? Councilor Cush.
Move the minutes as presented February 15th, 2023.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Okay, we have a 9:45. Did you want to go early with the 9:45, or you want to just pick up a couple more yet?
It's up to you, your worship. Your guest is here.
Are you ready to go?
We are ready.
Okay.
You just say the word.
If everybody's ready, I don't think it would be a bad thing to go ahead and start. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
I guess I've got to introduce the item here. So this is a delegation that's Palisade's consulting on the FireSmart presentation.
Come on.
Sorry, I added an S to your name there, Palisade, right?
Yes.
We had a former council member that used to throw an S on the end of everybody's name, so it was.
We don't want you to throw anything at us.
Right.
We prefer.
Believe me, the feeling's mutual.
So your worship and council, today we have a presentation for you regarding FireSmart. We had a grant through FRIA, which is the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta. And that grant has been completed and done.
Hey, just before you go any further, what I'll do is I'll run around the table here and we'll introduce everybody if that's okay. So sorry, we'll just take a quick break. We'll start with Mr. Frank.
Gordon's great to see you.
Corinne Scott, Legislative Services and Communications.
Devin Williams, Councillor Fortson Continue.
Bruce Brestage, Councillor Blue Ridge.
Dave Cook from Sawmill.
And I'm John Burrows, Reeve.
Peter Pilkin, Councillor Division 6, Goose Lake, Freeman River.
Jeremy Wilhelm, Division 4, Whitecourt East.
And Alan Dean, I'm Whitecourt West.
100% Director of Infrastructure.
Victoria Chen, Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you. To introduce the lady and the gentleman sitting at the table here with me, Mr. Murray Heinrich and Pat Golick. They are with Palisade.
Palisade.
There you go.
Palisades.
Consulting. And they're here today to give a presentation to council.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sheldon. Thanks very much for letting us have the opportunity to come and talk to you for just a few minutes about FireSmart. We're not really a delegation. We were asked by the county or engaged by the county to do FireSmart planning, and we're here really just to provide you with a real thumbnail sketch of what we did over last winter. Some of you were involved in what we did. So that's what we're here to do today. So you can go again there. So there's our names, Murray and Pat. We've been operating Palisade since about 1984. We both lived here in Whitecourt. I've been through forestry and the fire department, and so this is very quite used to this place over the last few years, very accustomed to it. So the stakeholders that we had going into the project, of course, the first one is Woodlands County and the administration of Woodlands County. We involved all of the fire departments within the county. We talked to them. We met with them where we could. We understand, of course, the constraints that the fire chiefs have with trying to do work and all the rest. So we did meet or talk to all the fire chiefs about the program. Government of Alberta, the Wildfire Management Branch, or Forestry is what we call them. They're an integral part of this. Of course, as you guys know, your county is entirely within the forest protection area, and they do have responsibility for wildland fires in that area. So they were a big part of it. So we're happy to have them along. I want to talk to you first about, we did two projects within the FireSmart planning. The first was what's called a wildfire preparedness guide, and the second was a wildfire mitigation strategy. Two very different documents. The wildfire preparedness guide is built for guidance to firefighters and to incident commanders when there's smoke in the air and you want the information on the hood of the truck. Because that is the time when you need good, quick, concise information right in front of you to make good, informed decisions. So that's what the wildfire preparedness guide is. It's really it's one sheet. It's 11 by 17 plasticized, so they can spray water at it. They can drop it in the dirt. They can do whatever. We also produce it in different formats, a PDF format, of course. But the one that's most common is what's called a Venza. So the map you're going to see in a second is geo-referenced. In other words, it use your GPS on your phone, and it attaches itself to the mapping system with that we're giving them. So literally, what you do is when you have firefighters come to the scene, is you can either text them or touch them with your phone, and they can get the information right in front of them. So they're very, very effective. We did a lot of work at high level. Chucky Creek Fire, they used over 120 of our guides because they were in every fire truck and everybody had them because they used them as a roadmap. So what you see in front of you is the format for the guide. We talk about what's at risk in the community. We talk about some of the strategies that could be used within that particular community. And then we talk about resources that are needed. We talk about water sources. We talk about safe refuge. In other words, if things really go bad, where are people gonna go to? We talk about staging areas, where does fire equipment go to when they're not needed to fight the fire, as well as some fire behavior information, which is what you see in the map there, which shows fuel types. We also do, of course, mapping. We map all of those items that we just talked about onto aerial imagery. So as folks, the responders can see where their hydrants are, where the fire hall is, and where those important aspects of their community are, like water treatment plants. So that's the preparedness guide. The next thing we did was the wildfire mitigation strategy, and the mitigation strategy is a much more broad-based, and it becomes a planning document. I think one of the biggest parts of the mitigation strategy is that we do a hazard and risk assessment. So we actually go out and we find out where the risk is in communities and what the hazards actually are. There are lots of communities in this province that don't need a whole bunch of more FireSmart planning, but we need to understand where those are and then make good decisions. So the goal is to provide Woodlands County and with the Government of Alberta with FireSmart actions to take in order to become a FireSmart community. So our objectives, the first one was identify and quantify the hazards within each community. So to do that, we talked to a lot of people out in the field. We did reconnaissance everywhere. We kind of go into every nook and cranny of your county to see what's out there. The next thing we do is we look at fire history. Fire history is always an interesting thing that we do because we usually go back to the early, the 20s, and we see where the major fires were in your area. We also do a wildfire threat analysis. So what is the actual threat based on the fuels for each of the areas? We then do a hazard and risk assessment of all the structures. So Pat's going to take you through that process in a minute. So we look at the actual structures that are existing within the community. And the last part of it is we identify opportunities, both long-term and short-term, on how you can address the FireSmart activities within your community. So here are the components to the strategy. The first one, which I've mentioned already, is the hazard and risk assessment. And the next one's the one that often jumps to mind with FireSmart is vegetation management. In other words, thinning, pruning, and having vegetation-free areas between structures and forest. So vegetation management is a big one, but we go a lot deeper in the strategy because we also do development, how your development plans are, legislation, public education, interagency cooperation and cross-training, and lastly, emergency planning. So we do take a really good comprehensive look at your municipality and all the documents contained within it. What you see in front of you now is the planning area. We didn't do the entire county. If you see the map in front of you, we stayed within the pink boundaries. We didn't want to stray into the unoccupied lands of the county. We wanted to stay within the populated areas. So in rough terms, it's kind of like Whitecourt Mountain and then the Athabasca drainage all the way to Fort Assiniboine.
Thanks. Yeah, I noticed that when I was going through this slideshow and then the other document, and I was wondering why the west side of the McLeod River was not included there.
Good point. I guess the good news, you want to talk about it?
I can hit on that point through the chair to council. There was discussions between administration and third party regarding the areas that were covered from the get-go. And because they weren't identified from the first off, when they first started the talks, we decided that we would go with what was already put in motion in regards to the areas. Now on the flip side, FRIA has put out a grant now, which we have put an application in for to include that area, which would include the airport, going from the airport footprint to the east, right along the river, right along the McLeod River. And then south of that as well, down 34. And we're calling it several different areas that we're calling it. So there's the airport, Grove Creek, Sandhills, which is going to be to the east of what we see in the footprint there. So it'd be more to the east, going towards on the corridor 43, right? And then the casino. The casino is 100% on board.
Okay, thanks. So basically you're waiting for a grant, and I would suggest that a lot of the risks and the mitigation strategies would be similar from one residential to the next, but certainly the airport would be different. And then I wanted you to clarify, so you didn't do the green zone, if you will.
Correct.
Would industry have their own standards that they have to adhere to that would be equal to this or even better?
Industry meaning forestry or oil and gas?
Oil and gas.
Oil and gas does have some standards that they do need to adhere to as far as, like, a lot of stuff where, a lot of the fires that used to be investigated came from flare stacks. You know, that has changed. Now there's more clearing that's required around it. There's all kinds of regulations for them as far as having water sources on site when the fire hazard is high. There's a bunch of things that they are required to do. And so part of it's dependent on if it's a temporary thing, like is it just a drilling location or is it a plant site or whatever. They do have requirements. And that's up to forestry to enforce those and to keep up with it.
It's a very good question because there were a lot of fires. We developed a document for the oil and gas industry specifically for fire smarting oil and gas facilities. And that went up to the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers is actually who put that document out.
Gotcha.
And we've done some similar plans as well for some of their permanent camps, like up by Fort Mac, to do the same kind of thing that we showed up here.
Thank you.
I just got one other question for you here too.
Yeah, through the chair to Murray and Pat. You had said that you ended that study at Fort Assiniboine.
Correct.
There's a lot of assets north in the White Zone towards the Wildland Park and as well into the Timu area, and I'm just wondering if that would be included in the next steps to have a look at, because you know it is an agricultural community and a lot of those homes are built right in the fringe of the boreal and the green zone. So obviously there's you know some education and stuff that could happen there as well.
Is that in Woodlands?
Yep.
Okay. So our direction at the start was really Fort Assiniboine, where the population base was. And we typically go about 2-3 kilometers around it. We didn't go up into that area, and we didn't go up into those sand hills and the land use zones. So we didn't go there, and I don't think it's anticipated in the newest FRIA application. Having said that, it's something that should be looked at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, we interrupted you there, so you can.
No,
continue on.
that is, we have no problem with doing that. It's pretty informal. So wildfire history, you do have a lot of fires here. 262 fires between 2006 and 2018 in that pink area. So it is very active. Roughly, you're looking at about 12 fires per year within that area. We'll go to the next one, next picture. There you see we mapped out the locations of all the fires. So it shows lightning fires and it shows man-caused fires. The lightning fires are kind of well distributed, and you'll see it, you know, it's not rocket science to see, you know, where there's people, where there's that there has been fires in the county. So particularly along roadways. The biggest cause of man-caused fires in Woodlands County is debris disposal, like roughly 30%. So that means it could be burning garbage, it could be windrows, brush piles. That's what's causing the fires. And again, that's historical. So my guess is that, you know, as like Whitecourt Mountain developed and people were doing a lot of their burning, that may be some of the indication you see of the blobs on the map. The next one is the fuels. The fuels are interesting in Woodlands County. As you move from Whitecourt up the valley towards Goose, you have mixed wood type of stands. When you go past Goose Lake, you're starting to get in a lot of agricultural lands. Same with south of Blue Ridge. The interesting part, and Pat, I think, is gonna touch on this, is the change that's happening in your forest environment. Our mapping, which would show aspen forest, which of course is a very low flammability, is slowly being transitioned into spruce and pine. So it's coming in underneath. So even though our mapping may reflect an aspen stand, what we found in Woodlands County is a high composition of those trees. The areas of concern for fuels is coniferous fuels, and if you just go to the next one. The coniferous fuels, so spruce, pine, usually black spruce, where they're prevalent along the highway just to the east of Whitecourt. It's prevalent in there in the subdivision. It's prevalent on the west side of Blue Ridge, coming right into Blue Ridge. And of course, the other one and the big one is Goose Lake. And Goose Lake is predominantly coniferous and has some really large areas of coniferous stands close by. So there you see what's called a wildfire threat map, the spring hazard, and the green is moderate hazard. So what you see there though is the areas that I just talked about. You can see up on Whitecourt Mountain where it goes into yellow very high, and into the extreme around Blue Ridge, and then right around Goose Lake you'll see another patch. As my friend indicated, you know, there's certainly lands outside of this area that have risk, and that's where they start to show up. If you look at that area that Sheldon has identified by the airport or by the casino, and you can see the change in the wildfire threat in that area. And it exists on the other side of the highway as well down to Grow Creek. So it really matches in really well with the fuel hazard. The wind spread direction is, again, no mystery. If, you know, whichever way the wind is blowing to is the way your fire is going to spread. And we saw that in historical fires. And so basically around the Whitecourt area, it's from the northwest. As you move to Goose and to the fort, it comes more from the southwest. The fuels risk, and I think I touched on this, the biggest risk to houses and to structures is not necessarily this big wall of flame that's going to come and take them out. It's the embers that fall, the ember showers, which is measured in the hundreds of thousands of embers per hectare. And those embers find a home on people's roofs, in people's gutters, beside their house, and in their wood piles. And that is where we're losing houses, not the big wall of flame that's gonna hit the residents.
Okay, so as we pointed out, the area that we looked at was outlined in pink on the map here. And we looked individually at 5 communities for the wildfire preparedness guides and the site hazard assessments. So we looked at Whitecourt Mountain, east and west. We looked at Blue Ridge, Goose Lake, and Fort Assiniboine. Okay, so when we're looking at it, when we're doing the risk assessment, the things we're looking at, and as Murray's already mentioned, the roof is a very important thing. So we're not looking at individual houses, but say driving around Goose Lake or Blue Ridge, looking in general, what kind of roofing material has been used in the community? Are the roofs generally clean? Is the siding something non-combustible? What are the eaves looking like? We look at balconies and decks. Decks are a great place. It's usually a bunch of wood right attached to your house. A great place for embers to land, for embers to get underneath and to start a fire and ignite the entire structure. We look at windows, are they big? Do they appear to be double paned or single paned? Where's the wood piles? Some communities we drive in, we can see people don't like to walk to get the wood for their fireplace, and the wood is stacked right up against the house. Other places, it's separated. So we look at that. Where's that? And slopes. And obviously White Cliff Mountain is a place for that. If you have a house at the top of a slope, we all know that fire will go uphill. If you've got a house with a great view and a deck hanging out, that is more susceptible to a wildfire than one that's set back from the edge. We look at the forest vegetation that's in and adjacent to the community, and what kind of surface fuels. If you have mowed grass all around the houses, well then the chance of a ground fire is greatly reduced. If it's long grass and shrubs and whatnot, then there's more hazard there. And we look at the ladder fuels. So if you have one of the things that makes the black spruce stands so susceptible to fire is that, as we know, black spruce have branches that go right to the ground. So you get a little ground fire creeping along, and it gets to a black spruce tree, and then it's quite easy for it to get up higher. Whereas if you have trees that have been pruned and it's just the stem, a light intensity ground fire could go around it, and it's just less opportunity for it to get up. So we look at all those factors when we're examining communities. So the greatest threat for overall in the county, and this is pretty common, is in the spring when the grass is dry. And so again, we all know what happens with dry grass. It can catch on fire, and if it's burning and it gets to ladder fuels or it gets to something else, then it can go from there. So there's a potential for wildfires in the continuous coniferous fuels in Goose Lake and southeast of Whitecourt both. In general, most of the residential properties, the risk is low to moderate. But again, with the continuous coniferous fuels adjacent to it, those areas could be considered to be very high. So here's what we looked at for the 5 communities. Basically the structures and site assessments for all of the communities was low other than Goose Lake, and that was extreme, again due to the pine and spruce trees right through the community, right adjacent to the homes that are there and the structures that are there. And the areas in general were, well, they kind of varied. Fort Assiniboine was low, as we've discussed, lots of agricultural development in the area of Fort Assiniboine, and that is less likely to sustain a fire. However, Goose Lake, Blue Ridge, and Whitecourt all had a moderate area assessments, and Whitecourt Mountain East, where the coniferous fuels were, we rated that as a high. So in order to mitigate, we look at all these different factors, which I can't read on there right now because it's too puny. So we look at public education is probably the biggest thing. People don't realize that wildfire can impact them. We've had some high-profile fires in Alberta recently that have some people thinking, but things like their wood piles. Let's move that away from the house. Let's look at the roof. We've seen some areas where it's just people must be completely unaware of the potential. And so public education is a big thing in that. The other is there's other opportunities for legislative things, for fuel modification. Let's reduce the density of the fuels, and just try to cool down any fire that's in the area and make it easier to suppress. Next one. Okay, so for mitigation, what we are suggesting is fuel modification projects. And so that is reduce the amount of fuel that's there to burn, whether it's through thinning or eliminating it entirely. Another source is the utility lines. We all have seen fires that started from trees falling on a power line. So let's encourage the utility provider to make sure that their lines are tree-free. Continue to manage grass. As we've said, the biggest hazard is in the spring when the grass is dry. But if grass is continually mowed and kept low, that greatly reduces the intensity of a wildfire should one start. And emphasize FireSmart actions for vulnerable homes. And these are the homes that have wood stacked around them. They're at the top of a hill. See what can be done to reduce that. So for development, one of the things that I look at, as I do have some background in land use planning, is what can we do to start to reduce the hazard right off the get-go. We've seen areas where a developer comes in and they want a certain look, and they put restrictive covenants on the properties and saying everybody should have cedar shake roofs. Well, that's not really a good idea in an area where you may have embers coming at you. So what we like to look at is to recommend things that all developments should have controls on combustible roofing materials. Do not let a developer come in here and say that they want to have cedar shake roofs on all their properties. And a lot of times that can be done through architectural guidelines and design guidelines, and just to consider FireSmart criteria when these guidelines are being developed. There's also, the NFPA has a standard for country residential subdivisions that addresses water supply standards. Let's make sure that there's water supply available to fight any fire should it start. We're recommending that any developer in a new area should have a wildfire risk assessment completed, just so you can see what is there and get it addressed prior to the new buildings going in there. And the other thing is route standards. The roadways in new developments need to be wide enough for a fire truck to get in and turn around and get out. They need, and again, these are things that can be done up front, and that so that you're not looking at a big cost to the municipality further down the road when you realize something should have been done. The other area that a municipality has is the environmental reserves and the municipal reserves. You can have a look at those and maybe thin the trees or reduce the amount of vegetation that's there while still maintaining a park standard.
Okay.
Okay, so here's our legislation. The municipal legislation, land use bylaw, and whatever, you can recognize wildfire as a constraint, require 1.5 meter non-combustible zone around all new dwellings. As Murray stated, these windborne embers come in and they get lodged against the edge of the house and your flower pots and your beds or whatever, and there have been a number of houses in Alberta lost due to that situation. Require the use of FireSmart building materials and require a wildfire risk assessment and appropriate vegetation management in hazard areas. Again, this is upfront. And the big thing, public education. Everybody needs to be aware of what they can do on their own property to reduce the risk of a wildfire. And it really is the key to getting people on board, to getting them thinking about what they can do to minimize the risk of a wildfire on their particular property. Interagency cooperation. Generally, and if we go to the next slide, a lot of the wildfires require a multi-agency response. So people need to know who's who. They need to know what kind of equipment each other has. They need to be able to communicate. They need to be cross-trained, structural guys looking at wildfires and wildfire guys looking at structure. And there needs to be mutual aid agreements in place.
Sorry, just, we've got some other things coming up in the meeting too, so do you,
Okay.
do you need much more time?
No, no, I think we're just about done.
Okay.
Cooperate with your neighbors. Next one. I think that's it. There we go. And we would like to thank Sheldon and Mike and Lucas at the Government of Alberta. They've helped us out along the way, and we give you these solutions. They're theirs. They are yours to implement, and we're happy to answer any questions if you have time for them.
Okay, thanks very much. No, there's a lot of information in the report. It's a huge report, and I think some of the really pertinent stuff is actually around development guidelines and land use and that kind of thing, which is we're always jotting that down in the margins because there's a lot of things that need to kind of go into that when we look at future uses. So, is there any questions from council? Councilor Dean?
Thanks. Just a quick question. What is your guys' background with respect to this industry and firefighting, et cetera?
I don't know, you got a couple minutes? I started my life in forestry, and I was a forest officer, including being a forest officer here in Whitecourt. So I fought fires across the province. During that time, I was always a volunteer firefighter, including town of Whitecourt Fire Department. From there, I traveled across the province as a forest officer and fire departments across there. And when I was in forestry in Edson, I was a firefighter, and I became the fire chief and director of protective services for Yellowknife County. So I've spent the better part of my career as fire chief and director of protective services. And I was also very happy to, if you guys know Ken Albright, who was the Reeve of Yellowknife County. We started Partners in Protection in the late 80s, and that national thing. So that's kind of my background.
I spent 9 years, I have a master's degree in forestry from the U of A. I spent 9 years doing land use planning for ID 14, which is now Yellowhead County, so that's where I do the development stuff and whatever. But I've also spent 20 years working for forest industry, doing forest policy, provincial standards on fuel management and reforestation and all that kind of stuff. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Come on.
Make a motion to accept the Palisade Consulting FireSmart presentation information.
Thanks, Councilor Bush. Motion on the floor, any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And, yeah,
Thanks for
we've
your
got
time.
a little bit of work to do, but, and some further engagement. Hopefully we get that next FRIA
Yes.
application, because
Yes.
we do want to continue on in the direction we started. So,
Yes,
Thank you
it's
again.
definitely a worthwhile project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to 5.1. This is bylaw 593/23, 2023 LUA 1, land use amendment. I'll go ahead and turn it over.
Yeah, good morning,
Go ahead.
everybody. This is a land use amendment application, 2023 LUA 01, to rezone 2 parcels that are currently hamlet commercial and direct control, both to rural recreational, to accommodate the additional RV lots and all the existing uses currently there.
Any questions from council? Council Dean?
I guess the only question I have is there an advantage for the county to have this this piece of land rezoned, or is this like
More just to accommodate the current uses, I would say, sorry, through the chair to Councilor Dean. But it would be more so that we can amalgamate the two lots into one, and they're all under the same zoning.
Sure. Okay, so just to clarify, the list of permitted uses in rural recreational could be complied with through direct control, right? We could grant those applications through direct control?
The council would need to approve those, correct?
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just was looking for some clarity as to.
Councillor Kulkin.
Yeah, a question through the chair to Mr. McKay. The questions that I have had based on the application, the original application, is the public process, the process of having the residents understand that this isn't just a gimme, if you want to put it that way, to an individual who has interest in developing along that corridor. And I'm just wondering if you can clarify us on how that process would happen.
How to schedule a public hearing, is that what you mean?
How, because that's what these residents would like to hear, is that there's going to be a public hearing process, and that because this is actually an application for some of the public land that's within that area.
Yeah, so just looking also to schedule that public hearing April 5th, 2023 in the fort for those people there. And they can voice their concerns.
Thank you.
Yeah, your worship, and maybe a little clarification in regards to the land use amendment process, right? This is for the purpose of a land use, and as required by the act, council has to go through a public hearing process to get public input to see if the public is either in support or against the change in land use. Presently, it's direct control, correct? And we're moving it to a rural recreation, which is the same landowner is desired to have that same designation of his property, so that he can be more flexible in the purpose of which his other property coincides with it, so.
Good. That answers the question.
Councillor Dean.
Just for clarification, it's my understanding that the land we're being asked to rezone is owned by the landowner. It's not the piece of land that we were talking about before.
Correct.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay. So, and as a matter of process, I think it's typically the typical process is to give first reading to the bylaw. Then, once the first reading is given, you do the public hearing. So, just because you give first reading doesn't mean you're going ahead with the bylaw, just so that everybody understands the process. Councillor Cush.
Councilor Will.
Oh,
just
Councillor
gonna
Will.
motion that council give first reading to bylaw 595/23, amending land use bylaw 490/17 for southwest 162-6 west of the 5th, plan 1084 KS, block 8, lot 1, and southeast 162-6 west of the 5th to rural recreational district.
Thank you. That's a bit of a long one, right? Thanks, Councillor Wilhelm. So motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Okay. We'll have a second one. Councillor Kulkin, I'll go with.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council direct administration to schedule a public hearing for land use amendment application 2023 LUA01 bylaw 595/23 for April 5th, 2023 at 5:30 PM at the Woodlands County Fort Assiniboine Regional Office.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Councillor Kulkin. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Okay. Thank you, Mr. McKay. So we have a gravel crushing award as item 6.1. Mr. Twack, you want to take us through this one?
Sure. Your worship and members of council, we have here a RFP for crushing that we're proposing in the cemetery pit by Fort Assiniboine. And it highlights we received 5 bids for the crushing. They were all over the budgeted amount for 2023. So I reached out to the lowest bidder and we discussed maybe reducing the volume slightly to meet our budget. They responded saying they don't have a problem with that, so we adjusted each of there was 3 different materials to be crushed, so we reduced each of them a little bit to come up with a number that's just shy of the budget. So we're recommending well, I guess there's 2 recommendations to either award it for that tendered amount or for the modified amount.
Councillor Kulkin?
Yeah, through the chair to Richard, I have no problem with the fact that we need to crush gravel. I'm just curious as to, will that meet the requirements that infrastructure has over the next budget period for the graveling program?
Through chair to councillor, absolutely. We expect these amounts should be somewhere in the 4 to 5 year range before we crush again there.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any. How does council want to proceed? Councillor Dean?
I'm prepared to make a motion that council award the cemetery gravel crushing contract to 685762 Alberta Limited for the amount of $795,400.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, correspondence and information. Item 7.1. Do we see anything in the correspondence or information? Councilor Push.
I'll move the correspondence and information as surveyed.
Very good, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so we are on to council reports. Oh, where do we start? How about Councillor Wilhelm? Alrighty. Trying to keep everybody on their toes.
No problem. I actually had a very light schedule since our last council meeting. I only had one committee meeting, which was the Lac St. Anne Foundation committee meeting, which we did in Onaway. So first time I got to visit that facility there. Very nice facility in that community. As usual, reporting from that committee, it's an extremely well-run group. We all work well, and we implemented some new strategic planning and last year, and well on track to meeting some of the goals that we've set for that administration. So having a great time on that with that group. And other than that, it's been pretty quiet. Don't have anything else to report.
Okay, very good. Any questions to Councillor Wilhelm? All right. We will move on. Councillor Prestige.
On the 21st, we had our community meeting in Blue Ridge, AGM, so we have a new board there. And on the 21st, we had our ECDAP meeting where 3 boroughs attended, and meeting went very well. Gave us kind of a better direction. So looking forward to the next meeting. And after that, I had a Eagle Tower Victim Services meeting. That one is trying to figure out how to go forward with what the provincial government's doing with victim services. Still not totally sure on what they're gonna do and how they're gonna roll it out. The change is gonna be in April 2024. So it's just kind of a waiting game to see what happens. But we're gonna continue working as normal till then. And that was my last item.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Prestige. Any questions to Councilor Prestige? Okay, Councilor Williams.
I had a couple meetings since our last council meeting. One was the library board meeting, the Woodlands County Library Board. Went over some, the year-end books, some of their upcoming spending. That was kind of interesting because a lot of the conversation was, that they need to spend their money, not just save it all. So, that was kind of interesting. Most times it's that we need more money. So I think that board's ran pretty well. Some of their upcoming purchases that they're gonna have and some ways that they save money. Like they had just for example, they had some shelving. They got quoted $13,000 for this custom shelving and they found pretty much the same stuff that they're gonna purchase for $3,000. So they're pretty money conscious on that board. Another one, I had a BARC meeting, went over some stuff there. The Rural Crime Watch and is looking into a catalytic converter engraving program. A new one. Shops, and you get an engraver. I'm not exactly sure how they do that, but they engrave certain numbers on, serial numbers, things like that. But the problem that they have is holding some of the scrap yards accountable for that too. So they got to have paperwork on a catalytic converter to sell it. So they're trying to implement some of that. So I think that's a pretty good one. Just as more of a deterrent. If the community does that, it might just keep the people from coming into the area, I guess, to cut them out. So that was, yeah, all I had going on.
Yeah, that catalytic converter thing is a pain. I know from my own personal experience, at least they could educate themselves on the difference between a cat and a resonator because they cut my resonator out.
Well,
So,
the problem recently?
yeah. Yeah, they took one off at the airport. So
That's
well, they tried. Sorry, it's mostly cut through.
That's the problem that we were talking about at the BARC meeting is somebody comes and cuts it off. It's $1,000, $1,500 to replace it, and most people's insurance deductible is close to that. So, do you do an insurance claim or do you front the money? So it's a really terrible thing to happen to somebody. But yeah, I believe the county had some stole too. So they're looking at ways to deter, anyways, because they don't think it's locals that do it. They kind of see it as in waves. Somebody's kind of running around while they're in the area. They cut off 10 of them and take them, and then they move on to the next community kind of thing. So,
Yeah, it's frustrating. Any questions to Councilor Williams? Okay. I will move on. Councilor Dean.
I had fairly busy couple of weeks since our last meeting. Met with Mr. Bashan a few times to kind of come up with an agenda for our upcoming airport master plan review. And that's coming along nicely. I'm looking forward to that. I think that's going to bear some fruit. And on the 16th, I attended a Brownlee session. And highlight there was one presenter went over an area of the MGA 6, 18, 19, and 20 that dealt with different levels of government's involvement and responsibilities within the planning process. So that was good information for me. Then, as Bruce said, on the 21st, I attended our ECDEV strategy session, and that's coming along well as well. And then I headed to Grand Prairie for the Growing the North conference for a couple days, highlighted by a session that was presented by the Sucker Creek First Nation and how they partnered with industries and other municipalities from an economic point of view. So that's up in that High Prairie area. As well, another session that stood out was the physician and recruitment program. just to get a feel for what their strategy is. I know our Reeve sits on that committee here locally, but I didn't have a lot of information, and everybody knows we need more physicians. And the one piece that I see that maybe isn't being addressed, and maybe it is and I don't know about it, is nursing. So there's certainly a physician shortage. There's also a nursing shortage, and it seems like it's two different streams, and I don't understand why. And then that night, February 23rd, I had received an invitation from Ecole St. Mary's to attend their project week, and that invitation I received came along with a cookie, so I couldn't turn that down. I ate the cookie, my wife and I went to the project week. So a shout out to the folks at St. Mary's, the students and the staff. It was a lot of fun. And also on the 23rd, I had a telephone meeting with Barrhead, our consultant for the evaluation that she's undergoing. And so yeah, that was my 2 weeks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dean. Any questions to Councillor Dean? Okay. Councillor Colgan.
Okay, yeah, I've had a fairly busy 2 weeks. On the 18th, I attended the Wild Workshop in Fort Assiniboine. Really well attended by operators. There's a real, I have a really good sense that is developing very quickly and is going to be relatively successful. On the 21st, I was at the DevStrat workshop, and like everyone said, Reeve Burrows attended that, and it was really good because it really gave us an idea of what that committee's responsibility would be. On the 22nd, I was on a call with the Canadian Voyageur Brigade group on the planning of the bicentennial and the piece that they're going to participate in. And it's becoming really interesting now because we've got a former resident, Lloyd Lewis, who has deep ties into the media world in Edmonton, and a group of videographers and filmers, and a lot of help from Bert. And what's happening now is that we're developing a possible documentary series with 5 episodes. I can just highlight those, beginning with the fur trade in the Northwest Company in the early days of Fort Assiniboine. Another episode could be the Northwest Mounted Police, which would focus on the role that they played in maintaining order and peace in the region, which is going to require a lot of research. The history of the Indigenous peoples, it would highlight the Cree, the Dene, the Blackfoot Nations, and what their relationship was with Woodlands County in Fort Assiniboine. The pioneers, the homesteading, the agriculture, which is part of the Ag Chronicles process that the Ag Service Board and alongside with Bert and another committee is working through. And then the spiritual significance of the Athabasca River. And what's interesting about this is that we have in our strategy a regional development piece, which would include a lot of the other municipalities which border woodlands. And these guys are interested in not only pursuing this episodal thing to tell our rural story, but also it's really important for that regional alliance that we're trying to establish to develop a really good, solid rural regional plan for this area. So this is in the proposal stages. This is the first deck where a group of the professional people have got involved and said this is what it could look like. I'm going to share this with Bert. I just got that this morning, and we'll see where it goes. But I think from Woodlands County perspective and the direction that we've taken in our strategic plan of being proudly rural and telling our story, this has huge potential. I guess on the 27th, I had a debriefing with Barb on the 360 survey. Was really, really good. On the 28th, I had a meeting with the Barrhead and District Social Housing, which the highlights there were that we got into quite a discussion over the needs assessment piece, where they're a level 1 and 2 housing group, but they have probably 40 to 50% of the people are level 3, which require more than just assistance. They require quite a bit of assistance. And the problem that we have is that home care comes in, but they have no other place to go because the other places are full. And, so we don't have a level 3, which is a transition, and it also affects level 1 and 2 because a lot of the folks that come in there are already borderline level 3, which would mean that they require more assistance. So we had a real discussion over how municipalities can start to advocate to have that service, because that falls under the direction of Alberta Health Services more than the regional housing authority, and how that would begin to be a conversation where we can move in that direction because the need is incredible. On the requisition report, we knew that we were going to have. We actually had budgeted for a $500,000 deficit during the construction phase of the new facility there, and it came in. We came in under budget at $305,000, and we think that the facility now is going to be able to get back on track again, and so we made a motion to just keep the requisitions at the same level as they've been for the last 3 or 4 years. So I don't see us that there's going to be a change there. And I guess the last thing is, and I'm getting some pretty interesting emails right now, is that there's a group in Fort Assiniboine who initially were involved in this debate over the gravel, the rerouting and stuff like that. And so I've been trying to guide them into a solution-based group of folks that are going to work in alignment with our municipality, where we start to talk about what we want that community to look like, what are some of the things that are important to them. And so they've actually set a meeting, and I got the thing this morning from Corinne, where I think it came in through your email, or was that somebody else that emailed me that? Okay, anyway, and it's I think it's a very positive step in starting to have that conversation of how are we going to, as a community, relate with the people that we've asked to make the decisions for us. And I said that I would be committed to go to that meeting as a community member and not as a counselor, because it's their meeting, it's what they want to decide. And I know there's some risks involved with that, but I'm pretty sure I can handle it. There's a lot of folks right now that are more interested in pursuing some of the negative side of those things, and I've made it very clear that if this wasn't going to be a positive thing, that I wouldn't participate. So that's where I'm at right now. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Councillor Colton. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Councillor Cush.
A couple things. Start off, I had in Salmo ag meeting. Out of the hall, again, they were very thankful over the capital grant from the county. They started on the kitchen rentals, cabinets and stuff kind of coming down. So will be nice to, I guess, see that updated. That hall gets a lot of use in the area, and it's been a long time coming for some of the needed attention to the kitchen area. They are starting for the planning for the spring barbecue. I can't remember the date. I believe it's the end of May. When I have it, I'll pass it off to council. It's usually a really good time. Good food, live music. I don't know, the events out there are very, very well attended and always a lot of fun. Like Council Wilhelm said, we had the Woodlands County Library Board meeting. Again, went well. Like you were saying, they had their budget in a lot of items. They thought that they were gonna be over close to, and then actually came in under, which is nice to see. When he's talking about, kind of scared to spend, they don't want to. They're used to not ordering as many books and what they should, and trying to keep that money in case something happens, but it is okay to spend money and get the stuff that you need, and funds are there and allotted for it, so. But they are doing a great job. A lot of the programming and everything they have coming in there and out. I can't begin to express how I guess grateful I am for the people we have running those facilities. They are doing a great job. Had a Whitecourt Library Board meeting yesterday. Good meeting. A lot of new board members are going over a full review of, I guess, their policies, kind of doing some updates, some revisions on it. A lot of them, even like we see at the county level here, where you have maybe one policy needed and you have like 3 or 4 that basically keep saying the same thing. So they're just trying to clean it up and make things a little bit more up to date and I guess streamlined. Spent a couple days down in Strathmore for the Alberta Care Conference. A couple really cool things out of there. One, I enjoyed the presentation from, it's called SEWA, the Southern Alberta Energy and Waste Association. They are looking at partnering, or they have partnered with a group. They're out of currently out of Europe. They do the conversion of waste matter to energy. So it's essentially, they have burners and stuff that kind of run through that. A couple of the off streams that they have from the equipment and the process they run. One is steam. It produces a large amount of steam, which is transferable and sellable. They do have the same, I guess the equipment is produced by Detachment. It is currently used in quite a few places in Europe. The one place they were showing in Germany that they do have set up, they actually use the steam and run it through heat exchanger and produce a ski hill on top of the facility. So, it is, I thought it was really neat. The presentation is cool. It is something that they're looking at. One of the other off products produces a couple different grades of ash that are resellable to concrete producers so they can reuse in that process. So they are looking, I guess, kind of in the development phase, but down in southern Alberta, they're talking about one in northern Alberta, trying to move things in. Another really neat thing that kind of come out of that was the high school in Strathmore. They set up, they want to do something for the community, some whatever that their students could build and work on. So they ended up building like a geodesic community greenhouse dome. They run just about year round. Most of the products they have got from, we'll say donations from construction sites that are just waste material that they don't need. Some from, I believe like ACO and TELUS, like some of the corrugated piping and everything. They're just, extra product or waste stuff or pieces that people have sitting there. Even some of the steel that they've been using to produce some of the stuff in their fab shop the students have been using have come from old metering boxes and stuff that just scrap waste that they couldn't use. So it's a good way to kind of redo that. They had an old, beach volleyball court that hasn't been used for a long time out in the back 40 of their schoolyards. That's where they built this. The students have been part of the planning, the engineering, the development, everything right up to include building the beds inside, running it and managing it. And they also have a large section of it that is available for other community groups and stuff to come in, and especially for anybody who's in the area who's looking at getting into like the possibility of year-round greenhousing or stuff. They can see what they have and kind of you can take ideas from it that kind of work or don't work and go from there. But they do have a lot of videos. I can't remember if the links are off their high school page or if you look it up on YouTube, but they have videos of the whole process right through. And a lot of the videos you'll see, there are actually students building and running it and doing working with the contractors. So it was an amazing presentation with one of the teachers and a couple students. It was, if council has time to go online and take a look at look it up, it's a great thing. Another thing come out of that, town of Strathmore, they ended up I guess more on their industrial side, years ago with a land transfer ended up with a large amount of land. Wasn't very good ag land, wasn't good, or not really good for production of air, anything really viable. So they ended up turning into about a 300-acre solar farm they have outside of the city now. The panels they use there for, I guess, weed management and whatnot. So they have little shrubs and that kind of stuff that grows up. They have partnered with a local sheep farmer in the area, and they, through the use of dogs and wireless fencing and stuff, they have it set up, and it's been working now for about 2 years, and they've been using the livestock for management and stuff, of all the weeds and stuff instead of spraying. So I agree, we looked at a bunch of things. They said the one thing that they looked at was the use of the land and the fact that it wasn't prime ag land to start with. They said it was rocky, it was kind of just not, without doing a lot of work to it, you couldn't really do much more other than develop on it. So a lot of that was partnered through another group that set everything up. They said as far as cost wise, there wasn't a whole lot to the municipality. So good that way. And couple of one thing we had at the end, or I think it was last week before that I was talking to Councillor Kulkin about. I can't remember if it was Yellowhead County or Lac St. Anne, but they do with their infrastructure department. They have like updates and meetings and stuff that kind of come out of that. And I'm not saying it's something we got to do monthly, but it would be nice even if we look at starting on either a bi-monthly or quarterly kind of rotation just for updates, so we can sit down, we can get more of a detail from our infrastructure on where we are on project, stuff that's planned, stuff that's coming, dates, just kind of a little bit more of I guess focus, or a meeting more focused straight on infrastructure and kind of move from there. But I can't remember which municipality it was. We had a good talk about that, and it's something that Lac St. Anne County, and they do it more so the council is kind of up on where all of the projects and everything that are coming. So it's a little less surprise from us from the public and stuff when stuff kind of comes up. So with that one, I would like to make a notice of motion that administration look into and bring back a plan for I guess an infrastructure update meeting for council and schedule.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a motion on the floor from Councillor Cush, and I would certainly support something like that. I think all the council would love to have a little more idea. And I know we're always out there on the kind of the tip of the spear kind of thing. So is there anyone else wishing to speak to that motion or add to it, or okay? I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
And my last point I got here, I know where my stance kind of was last week. We had our last meeting. We had a large discussion on land use bylaws and kind of where everything is sitting, and we kind of left it as information and kind of moved on. But given that there's a lot more momentum and some more of the messages and emails that we've been getting, and actually a lot of especially my ag groups, we had some very last of the end one conversation kind of about where our county stance is, and a lot of it ended up more directed how other counties, and again the case in Fort Hill keeps coming up. And I just feel like, my personal opinion is, a lot of people don't understand the process. They don't really understand how it works, and it's not we're not being directed, and a lot of our amendments or stuff we're looking at from outside sources and whatnot. This is just our decisions with our administration for what works best for our municipality. Some other councils may get it right, or may end up completely getting it wrong and fall off the shelf there. But I do think it would be, at this point, maybe a little bit more pertinent to have our CA, or not our CA, or our Reeve, at least come up with some type of message drafted, even if it goes in the Woodland Express and the Facebook page, something that it doesn't have much of a financial impact to the county to start with, but something that at least explains the process so people can understand it and explain that we're not looking for a complete rewrite or anything. It might help with some of the residents and their concerns.
Thanks, Councillor Cush. Any questions to Councillor Cush? Councillor Culkin?
Just two questions. One, when is your thing in Anselmo?
I gotta get the date for May.
Okay, but
It's-
it'll be in May
It's in
sometime?
May sometime.
Okay.
When I have the dates, they passed it out there, or the other week at the meeting, I can't remember what that was. As soon as I get it, I will.
And the second question would be, the community you were talking about where the kids were involved in that, was it Strathmore?
Yeah.
And can I get a link to talk to whoever is,
It's run by the school.
okay, so it's by the
You
school,
may be able to find that information from their high school.
okay? Cause I think that's amazing,
It
that's
was an
awesome.
incredible presentation.
I think we can do something like that here as well, if we initiate it properly.
They found over this past winter, running from they started the greenhouse last summer through, they ran out of light for what they have set up there. They're trying to do it mostly like an off-grid, so it's not hooked to the school or hooked to services. They said with what they have, they ran out of light about the middle of December, and then they ran out of heat middle of January, by the middle of January. But then a couple weeks later, it started, with the way it's set up, it's making heat and stuff again. So it's a really cool setup for that.
Councilor Dean?
Thanks. Just wanted to follow up on the, that notion of a press release or official stats. I wholeheartedly support that. And, in terms of I'd almost think that would be something that maybe could come out monthly, or on a regular schedule. Just a Reeves message in the Express. The Express is one place it would go, but I don't receive that publication, and so I've asked to start receiving it, and I really think it's important that as much of our information that come from these meetings as possible get put into that publication, because there's a lot of residents that do read it. That's their primary form of information gathering. So that's what I'm saying, is that if there was almost a monthly thing, I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay. Any other?
That's all I have.
So you're all done?
I'm all
Okay. Any questions to council? Other questions to council? No? Okay. So yes, a few people had mentioned that I had attended the ACDEV meeting, and that was a strategic planning meeting, so that was actually really interesting. We got to have a conversation about trying to attract economic development, more acting as a facilitator than a direct attract type of idea. So it's an interesting conversation to have. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was something that came up, and I kind of this doesn't have to be an official motion or anything, but I'd like council's blessing to float this anyways at the ACDEV conference that we have coming up. We've been looking for a way to kind of make the county a little bit more distinct, and I'm sure everybody's had these conversations. Oh, you're from Woodlands County, and where is that? And you have to use different geography or urbans or something to define where you're at. And I think a lot of people don't understand how big the county is, even people that live in the Whitecourt area, some of the pretty close areas around, they might not live in the county and not realize how big it is. So the idea came up around, asked me about the center of Alberta, because we do have the geographical center of Alberta here. Kind of mixes in a little bit with our bicentennial going on up in Fort Assiniboine. So what we're thinking is we might lean on that a little bit on a t-shirt or something along those lines up at EDA, and just see how people receive it. We've run into, and Councillor Dean's actually forwarded a couple of maps, and where is that from?
That was that physician and recruitment.
Right.
So they had a map of Alberta, and then there was a little yellow square with a check mark right in the center of Alberta. And I'm thinking we could do the Woodlands logo right there, and with a check mark right in it. It's kind of in the middle of Alberta, right? I don't think you have to pinpoint the exact spot.
Yeah, so as a strategic planning item, we don't have branding officially up on our radar until 2024. But if if we do a little bit of idea on floating this, we could maybe secure a couple things and we have a really good idea of where we're going from there. So I don't want to blindside council that you hear it's going on or anything like that, so I wanted to just bring this out and make sure that everybody's on board with it. Councilor Prestige.
I agree to promote that, but I think we gotta be very careful how we do it. That it's the geological center of Alberta and not that Woodlands is the center of Alberta.
Well, geographical, but yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Oh.
Yeah,
Boy, I have so many smart aleck things, I'm just not saying right now. That's okay though. But yeah, I agree. It wouldn't be anything aggressive. It's more an idea to see kind of how people receive it and how it floats out there. So if that's it, unless anyone has objections, we're gonna go ahead and give that a try. All of you received the update on the RMA strategic direction. And I think one of the things that's really interesting, and I haven't seen, one of the things that you get between the two organizations, between the I wanted to call them AUMA, the AB Munis, the urban group and the rural group is, they'll say, well, there's 90% overlap, and the rural isn't really all that important. You guys deal with exactly the same thing we do. When we go through this, it couldn't be further from the truth. We have different means of revenue generation. We have different services we provide. There's nowhere in an urban planning document are you going to find the use of strychnine. Nowhere we deal with the agricultural, and I think there's a lot of I'll go ahead and say kind of threats to the agricultural sector right now and the food supply, in the fact that some of the green energy is spilling out onto some really prime agricultural land, and that is becoming an issue. So we've got to try and figure out a balance as to where that's going from. Some of that's being driven by urban development and spilling out into the rural. So there's a bit of an oppositional force that's going on there, and I think now more than ever, the Rural Municipalities Association of Alberta is really needed. So if you see that there's more of a land, Alberta on the land type of focus, because there's only about 12%, 15% of the population living rural, but it's 85% of the land mass. And at the moment, we have, I think, 45% of the investment is going into rural Alberta. So there's huge dollars being poured into investment in rural Alberta. There's a lot of things going on. Green energy, again, and I'm not picking on green energy, but the topic of ambulances, air ambulance, and airports came up. So 2 municipalities have lost their winter air ambulance service. Part of it is a short runway, part of it is they don't have an approach, a GPS approach, a precision approach for the aircraft to fly. Part of it's maintenance, and it's tough because you look at things like airports and there's a mishmash of structure that goes over top of them with regulation. And 2 of the airports now are getting windmills built on the approach paths, and everyone's going like this.
What?
Yeah. Sorry, one of them is. I haven't looked into it specifically, but I understand there is a windmill being constructed in the approach path for the runway, which instrument-wise is gonna demolish the airport and prevent, future upgrades and things like that. Every regulatory body is going like this. They didn't say anything. Transport Canada didn't say anything. The municipality didn't say anything. Alberta Utilities didn't say anything. This group didn't say anything. That group didn't say anything. And the municipality didn't say anything. They put the thing up and they go, oh, there's an airport there. So it is the weirdest thing, and I don't know why these people cannot talk to each other. We're supposed to be in the information age and nobody has any. So, sorry, the information age, but we don't have any communication. And it's very, very frustrating when you see this. So I'm kind of seeing a lot of this. And again, I think rural Alberta is the link into rural Alberta is a lot of these airports. They need to be looked at from a strategic standpoint and trying to get patients to healthcare and emergency services linking these rural communities. If you start losing that, the communities are really at risk. So, Councillor Dean?
That windmill, that's not what Minister Horner was referencing.
No, it's a different one.
That's a different one.
Yeah, it's upcoming. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, if you look at Rocky Mountain House, they built Alberta Health built a certified landing pad for the helicopter at the airport. And they had to demolish their fancy water tower it's decorative. It was decorative at that point, but they had to spend quite a whack of money to get rid of the Rocky Mountain House water tower, which was a huge landmark for the town.
Mm-hmm.
So away it went, but that wasn't identified until after the fact. And again, it's weird the way this is working out. Councillor Cogan?
Yeah, just a question. You had said that, there's a lot of lack of this communication. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that there's a definite, we like to always, tell our story to the confirmed. And the problem that I see is that if we're going to be effective as RMA and as an organization here, is that we need to share the truthful story with our urban partners that says that if you continue doing this, this is where the challenge is, because it's not getting there.
Mm-hmm.
That information is not getting to the people that are going to be affected mostly by the politics of. So I don't know if there's a place in RMA where we can start a task force or get some kind of an idea of how we take the politics out of it and put the reality into it.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll have to figure out where that lies, but that is a good point. That kind of concludes my report. It's not, the first part is you identify where you've got issues and we move on from there. So if there's any other questions for me, I'll take them. Councilor Dean?
I just want to come back to that T-shirt logo idea. So one of the committee members is kind of spearheading that project. Can we just say, talk to Bert and make it happen?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
We don't need an official motion on it.
I
as
think
long as
Your worship and members of council, it's already in the works.
Okay.
My understanding, the email I saw.
Councillor Wilhelm.
I was just gonna ask council in general, has anybody ever been out to that geographic center of Alberta before? Looks like there's a statue up there, a bear statue or something.
It's one of my,
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed until we had started talking about it a couple weeks ago.
Well, and we even floated the idea at the ACTEV because they want to get a little more involved kind of thing is, there's nothing wrong with sprucing it up a little bit, but it's not something we have in the budget this time around. This is the problem with some of this stuff. We plan, we're kind of a year behind when we get to where we get to some of these ideas, and then we don't necessarily have the money to deal with it. So we're showing some fiscal responsibility, but there might be an opportunity to find a little bit to do something with it later on. So, Councillor Dean.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to badger you about this T-shirt thing, but that's new information if you say it's in the works. Can somebody reach out to the committee member? Because what she told me yesterday was that she's tried to contact administration a couple times and hasn't received a response.
Oh.
And so I told her that we would be discussing this. Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, our EDO, he has contacted communications regarding branding and stuff. And that was maybe Monday where that conversation was had. So that topic did come up. So I believe they have been in touch.
With the committee member?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct, because that, the concept was floated through to communications for branding consistency approval, so it has floated across several desks so far.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Councillor Bush.
I also make the motion, move the accounts reports of information.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Thank you, everybody. Okay, I see we have, is it Sergeant Dodds?
It is so.
It is, okay. I didn't wanna, misrank you, how do you do that? Is that what it's called?
I've been called a lot of horrible things, so don't worry too much about it. I don't. Thanks for having me today, everybody, and I appreciate you guys shuffling your schedule a little bit. I think I was originally on at 9:30, but I wanted to be at that meeting this afternoon too, so thanks for that. So I had forwarded some stats and some information previously, and I will focus on stats first of all. The stats that I sent were from what we have our third quarter, which is October through the end of December. So they're a little on the stale side, but they generally reflect what's still going on in the Barrhead Detachment area. For the most part, they're good. There's two sections we'll discuss: persons crimes and property offenses. Persons crimes are up from last year, second highest they've been in the last 5 years, and a couple of the drivers of that are sex assaults. So sexual assaults and other sexual offenses total 9 compared to 1 last year. Criminal harassment is 8 versus 2 last year. The sex offenses, I thought, okay, what's going on there? So I dug up the files that we had, and typically they're familial sex assaults is what we've seen. So it's somebody that you know that's assaulting somebody else within the family. And while that's not good news, the good news is that there's not a stranger lurking in the bushes sexually assaulting people in our detachment area. And some of these stats are double taps, I guess. If you have, for instance, a domestic violence file that the victim is I was at town of Barrhead last night giving the same kind of spiel, and one of the counselors raised the question, there's 3 under the heading of kidnap, hostage, and abduction. We haven't had any kidnaps, hostages, or abductions, but what we have had are forcible confinements. So back to our domestic violence example, you have an assault. If the perpetrator prevents the victim from leaving, that's forcible confinement. If the perpetrator threatens to kill the victim, that's under threat. So you can see where quickly we've got 3 stats for 1 file. So our persons offenses are up, but I still consider that our community, the numbers are still low compared to other communities, and it's still a safe community to live in for sure. Our property offenses, so 2/3 of the way down the page, not non-existent, but borderline. So 84 versus 150 last year. We ran Operation Cold Start, which was patrolling to find vehicles that are left running with the keys in them during cold spells. Didn't find any. And the second line down there in the property offense category, theft of motor vehicle reflects that 6 stolen vehicles versus 23 last year. So that's good news. Other areas where we've seen big decreases are break and enter, 18 versus 28. Theft under $5,000, 28 versus 49. Frauds are down. So if I had the explanation for this, I would bottle it and sell it. I really don't. We've got a couple people in jail that are prolific offenders, but we've had others come out too. And just, we'll take it for what it's worth. The workload at Barrhead Detachment has gone down, and that's just good news. Total criminal code at the bottom of the page, 163 for the quarter versus 226 last year. So overall, it's good news. Drug offenses on the second page, you'll note drug trafficking 2,
So we set a goal of catching 2 drug traffickers on our last year's annual performance plan. We achieved that. And the 2 people that we've got are who I consider our 2 most prolific drug dealers in the community. Both of them are still in custody awaiting trial. Both of them are facing a litany of pretty serious charges. And we'll see where that goes. I sort of anticipate files to be resolved by guilty plea in some cases, and there'll be some wheeling and dealing going on, but we had some real success there. So what happens? One drug dealer leaves, another one pops up. It's always whack-a-mole. So the good thing is that the 2 that we got are the 2, what I guess are the smartest drug dealers, and now the ones coming up are maybe not as good at what they do, so it opens a door for us to have success on them too. So we're already working on the next tier of drug dealers in the community and looking to hammer them next. Mental health files, 22 this year versus 11 last year. Last year was a bit of an anomaly on the low side, but we're still seeing a lot of mental health calls, and we're still seeing us transporting people into the city for mental health evaluation, which is very time consuming, takes a resource out of the community, but it's just reality. That's what we have to deal with. Collisions are up slightly from last year and the year before, but by and large, they are animal collisions, which are hard to control. Deer, moose, dogs, coyotes, you name it, we've hit it. So we've had a lot of collisions. False and abandoned 911 calls near the bottom of the page, 33 this year versus 18 last year. The latest was this morning. A lady phoned at 7:45. She was drunker in a billy goat and was looking for a plumber, and she phones 911. So, and she's somebody that we deal with on nearly a daily basis when she's not in jail. She's just recently gotten out, so apparently we're going to start dealing with her again. So we're going to have to step it up with her a little bit and maybe lay some charges for false 911 calls. I want to talk briefly about a real good win we had here last week. But I'll go back to February 2nd. We started seeing a series of break-ins to pipeline pump stations. And we had 4 in the span of 12 days or 13 days. And noticed a real pattern. These guys were caught on video at a number of places. There was 3 guys, 2 trucks, white Chevy truck. We saw some consistencies in how they attacked the site. They knew where to go to shut the power off, that sort of thing. And they took the same stuff at every site. And what they're taking is cable it's 3 or 4 inches in diameter, and inside of that is 3 1-inch lines. Like, this is heavy copper wire. And they would take 50, 75 meters of it times about 4 at each site, like a lot of copper. And what they would do is just tie it to the bumper of the truck and take off, find an isolated place. What we anticipated was they cut it up in sections, throw it in the back of the truck, and they're gone. So we saw that pattern, and then on the 22nd of February at 2:50 a.m., Pembina Pipelines had set up cameras at one of their sites and saw these 3 guys arrive. So they phoned, and this site was the section that this is on. We get the north 2 quarters, and Parkland gets the south 2. That's how far south it was in our detachment area. So the member on shift started headed down, called out another member. Parkland members started coming up, and they found those consistent tracks, the wire trailing behind the truck down a dead-end road. So they got the one truck with one guy there, with the back of the truck full of copper wire. The other truck tried to take off, went over a spike belt, made it all the way to Alberta Beach before it ran out of rims. And so we got the other 2 guys. We got all 3 in custody and took statements from them. The one guy admitted being in debt to his drug dealer for $80,000, and this is how he's paying that back. One guy had a fairly extensive criminal record. One had 1 previous conviction for mischief, and the other had no convictions at all. But this is how they're paying their debts off. The damage to one of those sites, anecdotally from the company, $750,000. And that plant, the day they hit it was not online. It was to go online the next day. Had they hit it the next day and taken it offline, the fines for the company are $1 million a day for not supplying the product to the recipient. So, I mean, the damages, by the time we add up all 4 or 5 sites, $2 million, you know, so that this Yahoo can pay off his $80,000 drug debt. But it just ties it back to what we've been seeing for years now. Our property offenses are largely driven by drug addiction. And, you know, so if we can find a way to resolve our drug addiction problem, our mental health problem, I'll be looking for a job. You know, it's that serious. It's that prevalent in our area. So that's a win we had last week. We're still working on firming up the relationship between the 5 separate B&Es and hope to charge these guys with all 5. So we're doing well there. Any questions so far?
Anyone?
Can I just ask a couple
Go ahead.
questions in regards to your persons reported missing? Successful in finding those individuals?
All except for the one. Yeah, we had that lady go missing last summer.
Okay.
Haven't found her yet. I guess we had hoped, you know, at harvest time, there's some farmland up there, or hunting season, she would turn up, but she didn't. So we've got a plan for spring when the snow's gone, and we're gonna be out there again looking.
And then the other question, spousal abuse survey code report.
Okay, so if I have 2 assaults, one is 2 guys in the bar beating each other up or whatever, versus the spousal domestic, we flag the spousal files with spousal abuse survey code. So what you see there, 17 spousals for that quarter is pretty high. So
that is spousal abuse.
That is a specific spousal assault. So that's what I was talking about before. That can catch 2 or 3 different stats. You know, the example I gave. So they do add up quickly on our stat sheet. But so 17 that we identified as spousal abuse, and that's everything from an argument reported by the neighbor to the old-fashioned bloody nose domestic. So it captures a wide variety of incidents. So it is what it is. Yeah. Any other questions, sir?
Any other questions?
Okay. Our staffing situation right now. So we had been running very, very well. We had the one surplus member that was assigned to us from another unit. He has now moved on. We also transferred one member out that hasn't been replaced yet, and we got one constable on pat leave. So we're running one hard vacancy and one soft vacancy, two holes in the schedule. We've had to adjust our schedule accordingly, and our corporal Vicente has stepped into the constable rotation just to keep the numbers up on the shift rotation. So we're managing it. It means everybody in the office has to pick up a bit of the load. But we're not seeing any holes in the schedule until we start seeing, you know, somebody phones in sick or somebody goes on holiday or something like that. We're gonna have to shuffle again. But the public shouldn't see any real change. I don't anticipate seeing a backfill into that position until after April 1st. Hard to say when, but certainly not before April 1st. And it'll likely be another member from Devil. Another constable from Devil. So that's our staffing situation. I had a meeting yesterday. Our new building is starting to roll. So we had a team meeting yesterday with the architect firm and K-Division folks. We selected a very rough drawing of the basic floor plan. Your conversation about green technology was interesting to me because that's what this building will be. And then I had another conversation actually on my way over this morning with the fellow from K-Div. And he gave an example of they're building another building in a community in the province here, using green technology. And the debate right now with that building is, they're gonna use solar and geothermal. Do we even put electric and gas to it? That's the debate.
Yes.
I kind of agree. You know, you're talking a critical infrastructure building, but it's just interesting that that's where we've gotten to as far as the technology and the conversations is, do we need this? The answer to me is yes, but I'm not the one who makes those decisions. But so it's going to be interesting. It's very exciting for us. Tentative move-in date is May of 26. We own the land. We now, in 2 weeks, we'll have another meeting with a more formal drawing of, after all the discussion we had yesterday. So it's starting to roll forward. So that's good news. The last thing I have for you today is the 2023-24 annual performance plan, and I'm seeking council's input as to what our priorities should be. And I've already spoken with the town and the county of Barrhead. The input I've gotten from them is visibility of police, which is typical, right? We all want that, so I anticipate we'll be doing that moving forward. And then I didn't get much else for feedback. The other priority I would suggest is to continue moving forward with drug enforcement. So I'm looking for feedback from you folks on that.
Okay, Councilor Dean?
You stressed the relationship between drug addiction, mental health, and property crimes. So I understand that drug addiction will be part of the priorities. Can you wrap mental health intervention in that as well?
Yeah, so not exactly. I'm not in a position to deal with drug addiction. I'm in a position to deal with drug enforcement, which is a whole different kettle of fish, right? Mm-hmm. Drug addiction and mental health, it's one of those things. It's not in my purview, but it's in my purview because there's nobody else, right? We actually, last week it was interesting because we've been talking about our PACT teams, which is a member of the RCMP teamed with a mental health nurse or health nurse, and they work as a team. This has been established in the cities for 10 years or more, where they've got a uniformed police officer with a healthcare professional who ride together full time, and they work shifts together. And if they have a mental health call in Edmonton, our PAC attends and deals with it or assists, right? Or provides advice to the responding officers. And this is something we're trying to develop out here. Now given our geography, we're not gonna have an RPAC team in every community. It just not gonna happen. But what we will have is, the ability to contact that resource. We can identify people who are concerns to them, and they can start working with them to try to, change their behaviors, get them the help they need, and that sort of thing. So last week I get a call from this member who is our RPAC member she's in Athabasca, and so she serves. And I don't want to get this wrong, but my understanding is she serves Athabasca, Slave Lake, Labish, Boyle, Westlog, Barrhead, and Merithorpe. So she's got an enormous detachment or enormous service area. But she was in Barrhead. She'd had a person identified to her by the family who was experiencing mental health concerns. The family got a warrant under the Mental Health Act, so she came down with our assistance. She went and executed the warrant and transported that person to Edmonton. So that takes the load off of us. This member is better versed in mental health response than we are, and that's her full-time job. So I thought it worked out very well. The stumbling block is trying to get the mental health professional assigned to that position. And that's beyond our control. That's a AHS situation, right? So trying to find somebody that wants to work in rural Alberta, we're facing the same problems that everybody else faces. We are having trouble recruiting people. AHS, ambulance, you name it, are having trouble finding people that want to work out in rural areas. So right now she's not got the mental health worker assigned to her, but she does have that ability to try to head some of these problems off in the past. So what we'll be doing is identifying some of our frequent flyers, you know, that person who phoned this morning, for instance, right? Alcoholic, hardcore alcoholic. So maybe our pack can step in and try to get that person some help and take the load off of us. That person was good. I did a little digging last year. I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but 40 calls for calendar 2022, something like that. And then off she went to jail and was gone for a few weeks or a couple of months, and now she's back and drunk at 7:45 in the morning. So, you know, we can't police our way out of that situation. So we've got to find another answer.
Gotcha. And I think to follow up on your staffing shortage too a little bit, I mean, that's not something that's unique to Alberta as a province necessarily. That's happening across the country.
It is. You know, the law enforcement profession as a whole is having a tough time attracting people now.
Yeah.
You know, we're not the only ones. So it's nationwide.
Okay. I have a plan here that will take a few more minutes on this one and then take a 5-minute break and start our presentation at 11:30, if that works with everybody. But are there any more questions for Sergeant Dawes? Nothing? Okay.
So I'll move forward with the annual performance plan. 2 priorities are visibility police and drug enforcement.
Yeah, we had a good discussion about that at the governance and priorities last time this came up, so that everybody was well versed in it. Are we prepared to make that decision today?
I think so.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, we could endorse those priorities again.
So I'll have a letter coming. It'll be probably right after April 1st. Now I got to sit down on the computer and put it together and send it to you guys. So thank you very much.
Okay, and again, thank you for doing a thankless job that, and you know, I think some of that staffing shortage you're talking about is the public perception around police right now.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
You guys care about your community and you do this for a lot more than the outrageous wage that you get paid.
Yeah.
I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, no, it is what it is. The conversation yesterday turned to there was a memorable shooting in Evansburg a couple of days ago. And it's frustrating for us to see fingers pointed at us for the number of people killed by police every year, which is, there's no police officer in this country goes to work hoping to kill somebody. Every police officer goes to work hoping to get home at the end of the day. And thank God that member in Evansburg did go home at the end of the day. Thank God that member in Evansburg didn't have to kill somebody, because I know what it's like for members who have to take human lives and live with it. So it's a tough job, and it's not for everybody. But we need to change the narrative a little bit. The RCMP is a good place to work. The job is fantastic. I'm coming up. I'm 30 years plus. Glad I did it, and we need other people to step up. So we need to change the narrative a bit. So, and your folks' support means everything to us. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks. Councilor Coulter.
Yeah, I'd really like to say thank you for the work you do, and with that, I'd make a motion that we accept the report from the RCMP Detachment and Barrhead, the update as information.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion?
So the recommended action is to confirm the priority issues for the AAP. I didn't hear that in the motion.
Sorry. Do you want to add that as a
Okay.
friendly amendment?
Yeah, I'll add that as a friendly amendment, it's fine.
Okay. You're good with that?
We're good.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Okay, I'm gonna call a 4-minute break. We'll start this at 11:30, and everybody can kind of get set up, and away we go from there. Let me know when you're free. Okay, so we're back from our quick break here, and it is my great pleasure that we actually get to do a presentation. This is a Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee Medal presentation. I'm gonna stand up here because I think it's worthwhile standing for something like this. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the investor ceremony for the Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee Medal. Thank you for joining us to celebrate Her late Majesty's Platinum Jubilee and to recognize exceptional Albertans. Today we pay tribute to those who have given their time and their talents to service their community, their province, and their country. Alberta's Platinum Jubilee Medal commemorates the 70th anniversary of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's ascension to the throne as Queen of Canada upon the death of her father, King George VI, on February 6, 1952. Her late Majesty was crowned on June 2nd, 1953, and during her coronation ceremony, it was held at Westminster Abbey, as coronations have been for 900 years. Steeped in this rich history, Her late Majesty's coronation made history as the first ever to be televised and watched by 27 million people in the UK alone and millions more around the world. Also, Her late Majesty, representing both stories, past of Britain as well as modern day world, she dedicated more than 70 remarkable years of continuous service to Canada, the United Kingdom, and the Commonwealth. The extraordinary achievement made by her, Britain's longest reigning and longest lived monarch, Her late Majesty expressed with her wish that the Jubilee events be an occasion for enjoying a sense of togetherness and optimism, and about the future that makes today the perfect opportunity to celebrate the achievements of people who make our community better. It also serves as a tribute to the example set by Her late Majesty throughout her extraordinary lifetime. Today's medal recipient leads rather than wait to be led. Challenges are tackled head on, and problems are seen as opportunities instead of obstacles. So congratulations to receiving this special distinction. And at this point, I'll invite Councillor Prestige to deliver his remarks.
Okay, thank you, Reeve. I'll invite Mr. Dave Jackson to come forward. Thank you. Mr. Jackson has spent countless hours volunteering to make the Blue Ridge community and Woodlands County a better place to live. After moving to the Improvement District in 1976 and purchasing Cottonwood Service Station, Dave Jackson, and his wife Edna, went on to be an active and impactful member of the Lions Club, Blue Ridge Community League, and the Golden Age Club. Mr. Jackson served on the Blue Ridge Fire Department for 24 years, 10 of those served as fire chief. His service continued as he sat among his peers as a member of Woodlands County Council representing Division 5, Blue Ridge. Mr. Jackson's contributions to Woodlands County have positively affected the quality of life and well-being for many residents. For the outstanding service and citizenship, Dave Jackson is awarded the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal. Congratulations on receiving this special distinction. It's my pleasure to congratulate Mr. Dave Jackson. Let's give him a big hand.
Thank you. It's an honor. I can't say too much, but whatever, I want to appreciate it. And thank you, everybody who was involved in it. Thank you. And I'd like to thank Edna for the volunteer work that she has done in Blue Ridge and for the county. Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations. So this concludes the ceremony. At this point, we will recess the council meeting for the time being. We're gonna have lunch and then we will reconvene again once we're back.